We are officially live here. Everybody, just take a minute or two to get yourselves settled. We get a decent crowd expected for this afternoon, even though we're during business hours here. So just give us 1 or 2 minutes, then we'll do some quick introductions and get rolling into the content. Am I sounding all right, Dan?
You sound great, Matt.
Okay. All right. Well, that's even better than all right. We'll take it. Love it. Yeah, give us just 1 more minute, guys, and then we will get rolling. Okay. And we'll see. We'll take it. We got an hour slotted for today. I think with the subject matter just focused on private scholarships specifically, we won't need all of it. If we do, and there's still questions, you got us for the whole hour. But I anticipate we'll be closer to 45 minutes, something like that. And as you will see, I do want to expand off of private scholarships because, and I'll say this more than once, I think one of the biggest myths that we confront out there is this assumption that private scholarships are a huge piece of this puzzle and there's all this hidden money and you just got to know where to look for the treasure chest. And I think that's a perception that a lot of folks have, and it's just not reality. Of all the financial aid out there, it's estimated that about 5% to 7% comes from private scholarships. So it's a really small piece of the pie. We want to focus on that other 95% or thereabouts, right? So I am going to spend some time talking about that, right? The biggest scholarships coming from the schools themselves. And so we'll have a little review to kind of get us started, and then obviously talk about how do we get efficient and smart from a private scholarship standpoint. So, okay, without further ado, my name is Matt Carpenter. We're representing College Aid Pro, my colleague Dan and myself. I'm up here in the Boston area. Dan will say hello in a minute. He's down just outside of Cincinnati in Kentucky. So we're all relatively close here in the Northeast, but I know you all are down there in Maryland here, and we're happy. I think this is the 3rd presentation we've done for you folks, and I believe it's primarily class 2023. But on that note, if you wouldn't mind, and let me just make sure that chat's enabled here, but I'd be interested to learn what is, and if you can put this in the chat, what is the grade level of your student, high school graduating class? Probably the easiest. Is everybody here 23s? Do we have some overachievers? Okay. So thanks, Terry. Thanks for correcting me. This is the 2nd presentation in our circuit here. So, and then we'll also spend a few minutes talking about this fun part of the process, the verification process as well. So, again, we're College Aid Pro. I've been doing this for my entire career, so hopefully I can be a great resource for you guys. And, this is a great opportunity to get any of your questions asked. It doesn't have to be just on the subject matter. On that note, please put the questions in Q&A. Dan's going to be in the background just answering all of your questions and interrupt me, and we'll talk live through some things if that makes sense. And the other thing is you can be anonymous in that Q&A, and that way, if you have a personal question, but it's one of those ones that are keeping you up at night, ask it, right? And we'll make sure that we address it. So, Dan, you want to say hello quick, buddy, and then we'll dive in here?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, so welcome everybody. Dan Bissig. I've actually been with College Aid Pro. It'll be coming up here on a year in March, and I actually came to work with the company after years of using the software. Absolutely love the software, and I got to tell you, I think you're at the right place because you're going to get some fantastic information today from Matt as he talks about this subject. And most importantly, I hope that you're using the MyCAP software for all that it's worth, because it's an incredible tool to help you as you're navigating your way through the college process. So welcome today.
Yep. And yeah, excited to have you guys, and and for those of you that have to duck early, or for your buddies that couldn't make it, right? This is being recorded. So tomorrow you will get you'll get this recording, you'll get the slide deck. So, again, kind of no worries there. You don't have to be taking notes too fast and furious here. You'll have all this at your disposal. Okay. So this is a little bit about us and our mission here. But yeah, Dan flagged it at the top. We nudged you this morning. We usually do at least a day of the presentations. If you haven't already, I recommend that you set up an account. Doesn't cost anything because it answers some of these big questions, right? And I think one of the questions that we always get, especially for folks going through this for the first time, is like, where do we even start, right? And this is what we'd say, start here. Because it's going to tell you right away, here's your EFC. And the EFC is probably a buzz term that you might have been hearing over the last weeks and months, et cetera. If you haven't heard of that term before, basically it's the foundation for determining your financial aid eligibility, right? The next thing it's going to do is it's going to tell you what a college is actually likely going to cost you. So these schools that you're applying to right now, what are these offers going to come back at if your kid gets in? And then the scholarship piece too. Who's going to give you a scholarship, right? How much can we expect, at which schools, et cetera. So these are some of the big things that we're trying to solve for within the platform here. Now, I want to do just a very quick review. When we talk about, zoom out for a little bit, right? Talk about financial aid as a whole. How does this whole thing work? And for those of you that weren't with us for the first time, there's a formula that, or there's 3 different ways that we can get financial aid, right? And the first 2 that I'm listing up here is the ideal. That's free money. It's need-based grants. So when you're completing these FAFSAs, these CSS profiles, sending your family's financial details to these colleges, they're looking at that, plugging it into their formula and saying, hey, are these guys eligible according to how we work at our school for need-based discounts, right? That are typically called grants, free money based on your financial profile, right? The other type, and we're going to spend some more time on this today, merit-based scholarships, where they say, okay, we don't really even care about your family's financial situation. We're looking at your student and we're looking at their kind of overall body of work. And we're trying to figure out, is this the type of student we're looking for this year? And if we are, well, we want to give you a financial incentive to come to our school, right? That's a merit-based scholarship. And the other type of what's called, quote unquote, financial aid, self-help financial aid. And this is, in my opinion, can be a little bit confusing, maybe even a little bit deceiving in some ways, where colleges are presenting this as a discount, but it's really money that we're going to have to pay back, right? In some type of loan or a work study, which is a job the students have on campus, but it doesn't get deducted directly from the bill. So, from a terminology standpoint, I just like to get started there. And then need-based financial aid specifically, one thing that we can do to kind of simplify things is tell you that every college uses the same high-level calculation to determine your family's eligibility for aid. And that is the cost of attendance, or the sticker price, right? These advertised sticker prices, which, as we'll learn, are usually misleading, right? Most people do not pay sticker prices at most colleges, okay? Minus your EFC, your expected family contribution, the dollar amount that gets assigned to your family, largely driven by income and assets, right? If that number is lower than the cost of attendance at a given college, now we're eligible for some need-based financial aid. Now, are we going to get that? Who's going to pay that difference? Is it going to be us? Is it going to be the college? Is it going to be a combination? Well, that's when it depends on the college, right? And there's the whole spectrum. Some colleges incredibly generous, and so you might recognize this term when you toured some of these campuses. We meet 100% of need. What they're telling you is that we're very generous in meeting need-based financial aid if you're eligible, right? And again, that's not everybody, certainly. So that's, again, from kind of a review and how this whole thing works standpoint, I think some important things, and I, especially for some of you that might be tuning in for the first time, please chime in with questions at any point here. But a quick transition to those folks that aren't going to qualify for need-based financial aid, or not much need-based financial aid. And even if we are, what are some of the other resources that are out there, right? And the most common type, right, is merit-based scholarships. Okay, so these are scholarships, again, just as a quick review, that colleges give us based on our students' criteria. And there's a whole bunch of different ways this works, right? Every school is a little bit different. Okay. And so you want to make sure that you understand the criteria, the particular schools that you guys are thinking about applying to, or have applied to. Some colleges require that you complete the FAFSA and the CSS profile, even for merit-based scholarships. So you want to make sure that you're being diligent on that front, right? NYU is an example there, right? Pretty popular school. If you want to be considered for merit-based scholarships, even if you're not going to be eligible for financial aid, you still need to complete those forms just to throw your hat in the ring, right? Again, the other thing we want to be aware of is that not every school even has scholarships. They don't exist at every school, right? So, and there's about 100 schools in the country now where that's the case. So again, it's just important to be aware of this information, right? And for example, none of the Ivy League schools offer merit-based scholarships, right? There's not one kid that's on that Harvard campus that's there on a scholarship, zero. Okay. And again, that goes for about 100 colleges in the country, and they tend to be some of the more competitive from admission standpoint and kind of, popular name brand types of schools. So we just want to know that, as consumers, and that's kind of what it's all about, right? Making sure that we're going into this thing eyes wide open, and it is a little bit of a black box, but that's what we're trying to open for you. That's kind of what we do, one of our biggest goals. And then you see this fifth point here. I'm teasing this because I'll end on it. We have another presentation that's all dedicated towards this that we'll have on the calendar for the new year. But and that is making sure that we are applying to competing schools specifically to help us once we get an offer to go back to that particular school and say, hey, we'd love to come to your school, but we got more money from your competitor, right? And try to use that to our advantage. And again, I'll talk about that a little bit before we wrap here today, but it's more just to plant the seed, because again, we're going to dedicate an entire presentation towards that very part of the process. Okay. Again, a couple other quick things to note here on merit-based scholarships, right, that are coming from the colleges themselves. We are, when we talk about merit, this happens through the admissions office. It's a little bit different than the financial aid. That happens with the financial aid office, and again, has everything to do with our family's financial profile. Okay. Another thing that we love about merit-based scholarships, as opposed to need-based financial aid, we can count on it for all 4 years with very few exceptions. Whereas need-based financial aid, that can move proportionally based on your income and assets, right? Or your financial situation overall. So if we get a need-based financial aid package year one, that could change if our situation changes, and very likely will, right? For better or for worse. Whereas merit-based scholarships, we can just kind of count on that for all 4 years. So that's, I think an important thing to highlight here. And what I want to do quickly before we get into the private scholarships, guys, is I want to bring all this together, right? Need-based aid versus financial aid, and take a minute to go into the platform. So if you've already created your account, you know that this is kind of your home dashboard here. You see the EFCs at the top, right? And, further complicating matters, there's actually 3 different EFCs that any given college can use, right? Most colleges in the country use this federal EFC, okay? Just about every public school uses this federal EFC. A lot of the private colleges use what's called the institutional EFC, okay? So NYU would be an example here. And then there's kind of like a subset of this institutional EFC, or a little bit of a bastardization, where some of the top colleges in the country, a lot of the Ivy League schools, the Amherst and Williams and Stanfords of the world, use something called the consensus methodology. Now, I'm telling you more than you need to know. Just giving you a little bit of the why, in terms of why this family, and this is just an average family of 4, average income, average assets, it's smart student, right? Above average student, but we are getting some significant discounts at a lot of these colleges. And that's where I want you focused, because like I flagged at the top, most schools, the sticker price is deceiving, right? You want to be focused on the net cost. What are these schools actually going to cost me? Okay. And then again, just to kind of bring that point home around scholarships, if we click on any school, any school you're curious to see, we're going to have every scholarship that they offer in our database here. And we're really good at projecting, well, how much is your kid likely going to get, right? If anything. So we can see this is an instance where at Santa Clara, for example, here, we're confident this student's going to receive a $9,000 merit-based scholarship. And if you want to drill down into the why a little bit, Well, then you can see, okay, well, here's the average GPA and test scores for students at this school, and I have a good idea of where my kid falls on that spectrum. So that's again, I think important to help you understand and have an idea of, again, how a little review of how this whole thing works. And then I do want to emphasize that when we hear this word scholarships, our best resource is going to be from colleges themselves, right? Not necessarily from private scholarships, which again, we're going to get to, in just a minute here. And I think another myth that I want to just get out in front of is a lot of families assume that if they don't have a really, really strong student, they're not at the top of their class and just in all these AP classes, then they're not going to be eligible for scholarships. That's a really, really common misperception that we run into on a daily basis, where that's not true. Even if your student is in the middle of the pack or whatever, I can guarantee you there are still going to be colleges that are going to be would love to give them a merit-based discount. So I also think that mentality is important to understand here. Okay. So let's get into the mechanics a little bit here in terms of the who, what, why of private scholarships, right? Who's now, obviously every family is different. The dynamics different in every family, but who should be responsible for this? Is this a parent thing? Is it a student thing? Is it a tag team? And generally speaking, what we would recommend and kind of what we think is effective is that it's probably similar to the admissions and financial aid process, in that the students, they're all over the admissions applications. They're the ones doing the essays. They're the ones that have to pull together their extracurriculars and do the Common App, etc. Whereas it's usually the parent or the parents that are owning things like the FAFSA and the CSS profile and these pretty complex financial aid applications. I think that mindset makes sense for private scholarships too, where the students are in charge of all the things like the applications, essays, etc. For any financial type things, usually it's the parents that are helping to manage that part of it. Okay. Now, what's a realistic expectation? And now, obviously, we can run the whole gamut here, but how we coach it, and I think this is, we have a pretty decent sample size here, is basically that if you do this piece right, you can expect to get between $1,000 and $3,000, right? If you put in an okay effort, I think that's a reasonable expectation on a return. Right. And something will, this is a loose calculation, a little bit anecdotal, but I think we can stand behind it, where if you tell the student, listen, if you can put in 10 hours of work here, you're probably going to get at least $1,000, maybe up to $3,000. And that's a decent hourly return when you kind of frame it in that context. And I think that's the right way to look at it. I mean, another kind of, another way that I say it to families, I'm like, listen, put the time in here with the expectation that you're going to pay for your books and maybe a new laptop for the first year. Right. And again, that's kind of the mindset you have, you want to have. Of course, to some people get really, really meaningful, private scholarships. It happens, but those are the exceptions rather than the rule. Okay. And from a timing standpoint, now is about the time to get cooking. Right. Or at least to start looking. The only way I would tell you to pause there is if you feel like you're behind on the admissions front, you're still working on putting your list together, you don't have those applications buttoned up, you're still wondering who needs what from a financial aid standpoint, don't put another thing on your plate. That is the focus on that task at hand. And once that is buttoned up, then you can kind of take a little breather, take a deep breath, and then go look for, spend some time going after these private scholarships, right? And then again, in terms of the how, it depends on the scholarship. Some are super easy. They don't need an essay. They don't need any financial information. And again, some of those, it's the exact opposite. They want the FAFSA. They want the CSS profile. They want multiple, essays. And again, of course, it runs the whole gamut, everything in between. Okay. If I could give one scholarship tip, this would be it, right? The most reliable resource is going to be local scholarships. Okay. And you see up there, on average, only about a third of the senior class of high school students will actually apply for these. And so a lot of them that do, a high percentage that do, they're going to win something, right? So this is your local Rotary Club and the fire department and things like this. So if I had to point somebody in one direction to say focus here, I would say focus locally, right? Before you even worry about going to find scholarships at the national level and going down a rabbit hole and maybe purchasing some of these, services that are focused around private scholarships. If you do one thing, make sure that you take advantage of your local scholarships. And I don't know, Terry, maybe we can connect on that at some point, but I don't know if you have a process or a typical timeline where you generally kind of release local scholarship information, if that's something that you do at your school. But I think we see a lot of high schools typically after the new year, kind of end of winter, early spring is when they release their local scholarships. And you can chime in on chat or Q&A if you have anything to piggyback on there, Terry. But yeah, that's definitely the big one. Okay. Now just plugging us quickly here, within our platform, you have this private scholarship search engine. It's never anything I would say. I'm realistic around this private scholarship overall as a resource, right? And I would never recommend that somebody use our software just for the private scholarship search engine, just because even though it has, just about every scholarship in the country and all that, it's knowable information that you can get in other places. I mean, it's convenient in the sense that you can filter it, right? So I can say, okay, I'm a resident of, Maryland, and, it can instantly say, okay, here's all the, hey, interesting, Baltimore Ravens scholarship, right? You can take a look at what's in your backyard and sort by things like the areas of study and stuff like that. But again, I just caution anybody that's telling you that they have the secret sauce to all private scholarships out there. I'm a skeptic, right? But this is, I think, an efficient way to go tackle this private scholarship search. And again, if you put in some time there, I think there's a reasonable expectation you will get some return. Okay. We recommend that students do this, and you're probably okay if you created a new email for the admissions process. It's something that we recommend students do, just because as you are experiencing and have experienced for at least the past several months, you're getting inundated with junk mail, spam mail, et cetera, from all these colleges and all things college and all that. So this can happen again, and it will happen again on the private school as soon as you start searching for private scholarships. So sometimes it's worth considering getting an email just specific to this. And maybe it's one of these things where the student and parent or parents both have access, so you can help manage, deadlines and stuff like that together, which is kind of to our next point here, right? I mean, it's again, just like the admissions process, the checklist gets pretty big pretty fast. So make life easy on yourself, and make sure that you have, everything in one place in a spreadsheet where you're not missing opportunities where, again, could potentially have, some free money here. And again, the way that we coach it is say, listen, these kids just went through the ringer. If they're done or close to done with the admissions process, like they've been going hard since this summer, right? It's a senior year is a beast, right? This first half of senior year, at least. So I always say, don't finish that process, take a week or maybe 2 off, right? And then kind of get back here, start focusing on the private scholarships. And if you could just say, hey, put in 2 hours a week, right? And let's do this for a month and change. Again, you're going to see a return on that investment of the sweat equity there, right? And again, we're not recommending that people spend 100 hours here. We're really not. Okay. And again, the last one is that even if you're a family that's not eligible for financial aid, wasn't planning to apply for financial aid, a lot of these scholarships will require, just to even review your application, a FAFSA, or in less cases, a CSS profile. So I would encourage you to do that, right? If nothing else for this, and you can thread the needle here, guys, in the sense that if you did not check the box that you were going to apply for financial aid, you can still complete the FAFSA and use it for a couple things, but private scholarships, eligibility for private scholarships being one of those. Okay. Okay, let me make sure I get, okay, let me just make sure I share Terry's message here. And Terry Burrows, by the way, you're a school counselor. If that name is not ringing a bell to everybody, I'm sure everybody knows you, Terry, but just in case. So you all have a scholarship bulletin, okay, for Bishop McNamara students, and it's updated as the school gets information from these scholarship organizations. And then the link in the email sent to seniors twice a month. Okay, this link is in the email sent to seniors twice a month. So this also kind of gets to a point that we're constantly trying to coach up families going through this, is that a lot of this important information goes to the students and sometimes only to the students. So it's really important that they're dialed in here. So here's kind of another example, right, where twice a month, I don't know if it's going home as well, but twice a month, these students are getting emails with the link for this updated scholarship information. Okay. So a strange thing here is, this thing called scholarship displacement, right? So what a fair percentage of schools do is that you get accepted into the school, you get your financial aid award letter, your financial offer, basically. You commit to that school. And then after May 1st, which is kind of the drop dead date for committing to colleges, that's when deposits are due. They're going to say, hey, did you win any local scholarships, right? Are you getting any money for college outside of what the discounts we gave you? And you say, yeah, we won $2,000 from the Rotary Club and we got $1,000 from this, organization. We got $3,000. A lot of these colleges will say, okay, perfect. We can reduce your financial aid package by $3,000, right? Which is kind of a joke, right? And obviously a lot of these families are going, so we did all that work and, had that celebration for $3,000 for nothing because we're right back where we started. And basically the answer is yes, right? That is something that a fair amount of colleges do. Again, not all of them. And it will, I think I can say never. I hate to use that word in this process, but I think it never impacts merit-based scholarships, right? If a college is going to do this scholarship displacement, it usually always starts with need-based financial aid. Okay. But it's more of an FYI. We like to share this with people because it happens. And I hate when people find out about it when it's really too late. They're already committed to the school and it's a complete, gut punch. And it just doesn't make sense, basically, right? Or not fair, whatever term you want to use. Those are probably both accurate. But something else that we want to, the takeaway here is, well, what can you do about this? Yeah, you can look at the schools that you're applying to and ask those questions that they displace scholarships. But really, if this happens to you, you want to fight it, right? You absolutely want to fight it via the appeal process. And again, it's kind of the last slide I'll share with you before we leave here, but it is something that you can, even if this decision goes against you initially, it is something you can push back on. And we see with a decent amount of success that colleges will at least at least bend a little bit here in the sense that they might say, okay, we won't have it impact your free money. We might take away your work study, or we might reduce your loan, something like this. So, but the takeaway is if this happens to you, be prepared to go through the proper channels to fight it. And again, we'll talk about what that is. Now, most scholarships are, and this is something else to just flag and be aware of as you're budgeting out for 4 years. Most private scholarships, and this is why, again, they're way less powerful than scholarships that are coming directly from colleges, but most of them are 1 year. They're one and done. Okay. So you're just going to get that discount. Just use that hypothetical $3,000 that I got locally. That's awesome, but I'm only going to get it for freshman year. Okay, so it's not going to be for all 4 years. Now there's exceptions, right? So again, especially as we're budgeting and especially as we're thinking about which ones do we want to apply to, obviously there's a huge difference for the ones that are renewing and are good for all 4 years, right? That's 12,000 versus 3,000 type of deal. So this is just one we pulled. We don't have any affiliation or anything like that with this organization, but it's just a good example of a very generous scholarship, and it's good for all 4 years. Okay, so again, this is one of those exceptions rather than the rule. Okay, I'm gonna spend a couple minutes talking about verification before we kind of tease appeals and go into that part of the process. But anytime we get in front of anybody, we like to ask for help in preventing a FAFSA change from happening for next year. And you guys, you class 2023 families, are the guinea pigs. You're the first family that are going to have to go through this rule change. And there's a couple rule changes. Some of them are great. We're psyched about it. There's going to be more resources for people that need the most help. The FAFSA itself is going to be easier to complete, right? They're slashing a ton of questions. But in my opinion, there's a few bad changes. The worst one is they're taking away this variable that accounts for families that have more than one student in college at once, excuse me. And I'm not just talking about multiples, right? So of course, if you have twins, that's kind of a given, but even if you have kids that are 2 years apart, right, that are going to overlap for 2 years, right now the formula accounts for that. And basically they say, okay, family, you have the same amount of resources, but now you got to divide it between 2 kids. We're going to account for that and basically say that you can pay only half for each of them, essentially, right? That's going away. Okay, so effectively, for many, many families that have multiple kids, the cost of college is going to double when this rule goes into place for you compared to what it is now. So we started a petition. We have something like 65,000 signatures. We got to get to 100 if we have a chance to get in front of real decision makers. We've been working hard kind of behind the scenes to try to prevent this from happening. And that's where we're at. So that's why any chance we get to get in front of people and talk about that, we want to do it. And actually, I know I'm not sharing my screen for a second, but let me just grab the link for you. And then I want to talk about verification before we get into appeals here. Yeah, because if you're willing to sign and share this, we're always very grateful for it. And ultimately it's helping you. And if it doesn't help your family, or impact your family, I promise it impacts some of your buddies. Okay, and I just popped that link in the chat there. And again, grateful for anybody willing to sign it and obviously share it. And the more people that we can get that in front of, the better. Okay, so let me shift gears for a second, and because it's timely this time of year, right? Because we kind of we bucket this. I guess I don't need to share it, but we bucket this process, right, into a few different pieces, right? First, kind of junior year going into senior year, you're trying to get a hold of, where are we at in this financial aid spectrum? Where are we at financially? Where are we at academically? We build this list of colleges going into our senior year. Then fall of senior year, it's game time, right? We're submitting these admissions applications. We're submitting the FAFSA. We're submitting the CSS profile. So that's kind of, for a lot of us, done or at the finish line. And the next step is private scholarships, right? Okay, we've applied to these schools, but where can we go get some discounts elsewhere, right? So private scholarships here. And then the other piece that happens, generally speaking, pretty close after financial aid applications are submitted, is something called the verification process, which is basically a college's audit system, okay? And it's annoying, number one, because I think for a lot of families, they're like, okay, well, we're all done. We hit submit on the FAFSA, we hit submit on the CSS profile, we can put our feet up now. And now I'm getting this email that I need to complete something called the IDoc. And now this college is saying we need to send them their tax returns, but didn't we connect the tax returns on the FAFSA? And now they're saying they need a tax transcript and a W-2. So part of it is a mindset where like, okay, we're not done. All right, we satisfied our deadlines by submitting the financial aid applications. But a lot of these schools want to verify what we put on those. They want to take a closer look into our tax returns, make some of their own interpretations in some cases. And it's just kind of another, pain in the butt that we got to go through. right? And just another box we got to check. But I think it's helpful to have some information. Okay. And oh, sorry guys, sorry I didn't get my link, but it looks like Dan satisfied that. But so there's a few different ways in which verification works here, right? And one of them is that you don't get verified at all, right? Not everybody gets chosen for verification. So it could be that if you apply to 8 colleges, you don't get chosen for verification, you're done, right? You completed the FAFSA and you're done. Now, again, that's the exception, especially if we're applying to multiple schools. Most people will get chosen for some type of verification. You didn't do anything wrong. Okay. There's that. I think this feels a little bit icky and people feel like, oh, I'm being audited and I'm being singled out. Did I do something wrong? Did I think I'm up to something? A lot of these schools, I shouldn't say a lot of these schools, but a lot of the private colleges that require the CSS profile, they verify 100% of applicants, right? So it's they're not picking on anybody. It's just a standard operating procedure. They require that the same as they require the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Okay. It kind of goes back to something I touched on earlier, in that it's up to us to figure out, well, who needs what, right? And when it comes to this verification process, it's more about just paying attention. Usually, if they need information outside of the financial aid applications, you're going to hear from them. Okay. And so it could be, for example, a lot of the colleges that use, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this link in the chat because we have some pretty thorough resources. Oh, Dan, I sent it only to you. I see what I did here, buddy. Let me send this to everybody. Okay, so this link in the chat is going to give you, you'll have access to this page where I kind of have a pretty detailed breakdown of how this whole verification process works. And then some of you might recognize this. A lot of the colleges that require the CSS profile, after you submit it, they're going to say, hey, we want, now we need you to complete IDOC, right? Which is kind of a branch of College Board. And so same group that you did the SATs through, same group that you submitted the CSS profile to, they have a branch that basically collects these verifying documents, tax returns, W-2s, et cetera, on behalf of a lot of colleges. And it's just kind of, again, a tedious process where they want it completed a particular way. Okay. And we have just a walkthrough of the whole thing here, right? So you'll have that. So if you haven't completed IDOC yet, not all of you will have to, right? Not all of you will have to. Again, every school is different here. But if you do have to complete that, this is a really good resource where you can just kind of do it, have it on your computer, pause it and go kind of as it's convenient for you. Another thing that we have in here is that a decent amount of these colleges will require your tax transcripts. This is different than your tax returns, right? It's a little bit weird. Not a lot of people know that, but your tax transcripts is different than your tax returns. And a lot of these colleges will require it, especially for those of you that completed the FAFSA. If you weren't able to link your tax returns there through the data retrieval tool, or you chose not to, in just about every case, you can expect colleges will want your tax transcript. So just here, we have the link embedded in here. Just go, I think it's a good thing to just order now and have at the ready, just to be prepared to get that request, which a lot of you will. Okay, it doesn't cost anything. You just go in there into the IRS website, download it, and then you have it, right? But it's something that we can expect. Anybody asking for your federal tax returns, it's just your federal tax returns and all the schedules. You don't need to include state returns, right? And like usually say less is more. You know, if you're not sure if something should be included, you can leave it out. And if they're going to actually need that, they're going to come back to you and say, hey, we need this 1099, or hey, we need this, you know, Schedule 1, whatever it happens to be. Okay. So, you know, again, the big takeaways are, be on the lookout for any of these requests, because they're not going to give you your final offer until you've got these over to them. The students have to be dialed in too, because even though we're talking about tax returns and things like this, sometimes it's just them getting these notifications. And you really can't mess this up, right? If you include too much, they'll disregard it. If you can include too little, they'll circle back and say, hey, we didn't get this W-2, you know, whatever it happens to be. And again, I think this is a really helpful resource as we kind of, you know, I walk through how the whole overall process works, and then one of my colleagues Peg gives a line by line for how to complete this IDOC. Okay. So this isn't fun stuff, guys. I know that this isn't wildly entertaining by any stretch, but hopefully, if you're already have some experience with this process, this can be a great additional resource for you all. And if you don't, you can come back to it if and when you find it helpful. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is I just want to, because as we talk about, it's somewhat relevant to scholarships here, right? And it's also timely, especially today. I know a lot of you are probably waiting on admissions decisions today for some of these early schools and over the next days and weeks, et cetera. But again, almost any chance we get to get in front of people, we just want to make sure that they understand that whatever financial offer you get initially is not necessarily the end all be all, right? And that's an important mindset to have. Okay. And again, we will do an entire presentation on it in the coming weeks here after the new year. And we do just a lot of them to our general audience because it's an important part of the process. I find it to be a fun part of the process to see if we can do better than we did initially. And there's a method to the madness, right? But my biggest takeaway, at least for today, as we just plant the seed, is just the concept of have the mindset that the initial offer you get is not necessarily as good as you can do. Okay, so just kind of stay tuned as we continue to educate you all on best practices there to maximize your odds of success. And we got a great team and a unique team in the sense that on our team is the current director of financial aid at Harvard Medical, the current director of financial aid at MIT, the former director of financial aid at Denison, Rice, Rutgers, UCLA. So we have this great network of folks that were either on that side of the fence or currently are on that side of the fence that we can tap into them to say, okay, we got this award from this school. How should we go back specifically to do better? So we're talking about this stuff all the time, especially over the next several months leading up to May 1st. This will probably be our biggest piece of subject matter. Okay. So I think these are kind of the big ones for today, guys. If you have, let me, on that note, I do want to tease this feature that will also be coming hopefully shortly after the new year. In your accounts here, this right now, if you're accepted into a college, right, you can upload your award letter. And we're going to help you translate it because, we did a presentation last night and we spent a lot of time going through actual award letters and how confusing they can be and understanding need-based financial aid versus a scholarship versus a loan, et cetera. We help you simplify that. We help you translate it to understand ultimately what's the net cost that you're going to have to pay at school A versus school B. So you can compare apples to apples. But the newest feature, in addition to that, is that we're going to flag, okay, you got into BU and you got X amount of dollars. Is that a good award for you? Did they treat you fairly based on how they run their business and based on your particular situation? So we're psyched and hopefully that goes live right in and around the new year. We've missed every tech deadline we've ever had, so I don't want to promise anything. Maybe this will be the first one we get on time, but it won't be long after the new year if we do miss it. It will be this award season. So it's going to be really important that you upload your awards in here when you're accepted. And yes, we'll help you translate it, but more importantly, say, did you get a good deal from BC? BC, I can pick on them because there's no shortage of applicants at BC and they're in my backyard here and they're an amazing institution, but they traditionally under award students, right? And pretty much with 100% batting average last year, we were able to say, thanks for the acceptance. Thanks for the award. You gave us $10,000 less than you should have. Please make us whole. And they said, basically, mea culpa. Here you go. Okay, across the board. So, and that's a common practice. That's not just BC. Okay, so this is a great gut check, right? To say, well, how did we actually do versus how were we supposed to do? Based on how this school runs its business. So, we'll be continuing to talk about this and coach you all up on it, but want to make sure that you don't, that that's at that's at your disposal here. And again, we will send you, we'll send you a follow-up tomorrow with that. Again, we'll have this recording. It will have the slide deck. You'll have access to the platform. If you upgrade at any point to all the bells and whistles on our platform, you can, and again, this will be in your follow-up email. You can use this Bishop 10 coupon redemption code that will give you some money off, right? So everybody has free access to it. The full, if you get all the bells and whistles, it's $149 before your discount. What I do want to make sure that I articulate is if that's something that you want, right, all the bells and whistles to the platform, but you can't afford the $149, just write to us. Just write to info@collegeaidpro.com. Say, Matt told me when I was at the Bishop McNamara presentation that we could upgrade for free if we can't afford the $149, and we will take care of that on the back end for you all. Obviously, we ask that you be honest with us. We don't fact check that or anything. So you can get away with a fast one, but we'd appreciate if you wouldn't. And the other option you have is that I think is a great thing to consider for folks is you can talk to any of us, right? You can, in addition to having access to the platform for a year, if you want, you can get that and get an hour with myself or Dan or Ryan, who's at Harvard, Josh, who's at MIT, Peg, anybody on our team. Book an hour with us. So this time of year, people are using that to help review their financial aid applications or maybe get involved with an appeal, wherever that might be. But you can do that as well. It's $299 before your coupon code there. But again, that gives you full access to the platform for a year and an hour with one of us, right? So obviously, hopefully goes without saying, but zero obligation there. But that's just kind of the different ways that you can interface with us. Oh, and the last thing I do want to make sure you all have access to, that's another great free resource in my opinion, is every other Monday we have what we call office hours, right? And oftentimes those are hosted by Dan, by myself, by our colleague Peg. We'll have guests on, but every other Monday at 7 Eastern time, we just kind of have an open grab bag. Okay, what are your questions, guys? Right? How can we help you? So this makes a lot of sense for people that are like, oh, I forgot to ask this on the webinar, but I don't want to book an hour to talk to somebody, but I do want to talk to somebody and ask this question real quick. So sign up for office hours. It's just like a recurring webinar, but you'll get pinged and just kind of get a reminder, say, hey, we're open tonight, pop in for the hour, ask your question, whatever. But again, our main goal here is that you just know that we're here as a resource, leverage the technology, leverage our expertise. And I think there's a lot of variables and unknowns in this thing, but we're very good at helping you stack the deck and the odds in your favor. And that's what it's about, right? There's so many uncontrollables, but if we can get our controllables right and just kind of leverage our odds, we're maximizing our odds of having great end result here. And hopefully we're minimizing some of the stress and anxiety that's, I think, inevitable in this process. As long as I've been doing this, I don't know that I've met a family yet that's enjoyed zero stress from beginning to end. I don't know if you have, Dan, but
I have not, Matt.
Yeah,
no.
That would be a first, right?
We
say it every. It makes sense. It's your kids and your money. Those are pretty, provocative things for most of us, right?
Yeah, and obviously the other part of that conversation too is that every family is unique in some way or another. They may be 85% all the same, but there's going to be something that makes them a little bit different.
No doubt about it. Yep, no doubt about it. So, yeah, I think that's it for us, guys. I mean, like I said, continue to follow along. We appreciate you tuning in. We hope that you continue to, as kind of our first year in this partnership of sorts with Bishop McNamara. And please, we love feedback. Right. And even negative feedback, that just makes us better. So we welcome that because we want to learn from it. And I'm sure Terry would love to hear as well if you guys are getting any value out of this or the platform or both or neither or whatever, that helps make us better and probably helps Terry evaluate if this is a partnership, that you all want to continue moving forward. And we sure hope it is. So. All right, Dan, thanks, brother. Thanks for taking some time with me. Terry,
holidays, everybody.
happy holidays. Thank you for saying that. This is our last event of 2022. So yeah, happy holidays, everybody. Have a great break, and best of luck on the admissions front too. I know a lot of you are probably on pins and needles right now, so we will we'll send out all the vibes we can muster up here. See you guys.
Bye, everybody.